Hello, everybody. Welcome to Divephoria Episode 2, now with the OG Dive Boys, the final form of the dive, live and in studio.
Now, I just want to see if we can do a high five as good as we did the first time.
That was
not as good.
It wasn't as good.
We had to. This is might as well be the fourth time we filmed this intro. Don't ask me how we've messed up an intro so many times. This has happened. We're getting into the groove.
Let's just say, is new here.
I'm new here, you know.
First time.
It's tough. New studio. I'm very intimidated. You know, new faces.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. Well, I didn't.
There's only one man doing the intro. You know, I'll let the people at home piece it together. What happens.
Do they bleep stuff on this show? Because
they will. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
if you can,
they'll fix it in post.
They'll fix it in post. Sorry,
no
Matt.
problem.
So I can just keep slanging them.
It would be better if you didn't.
Pew, pew.
But you know, you shoot from the hip, Kobe. I respect it. Whatever you're gonna do here. By the way, platforms anywhere you get the Dive or Euphoria, this podcast is available. I know a lot of you probably watching on YouTube, but just remember, I don't know where.
Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor.
Well, I get the Dive
SoundCloud
live experience.
There you go.
I can also get this one live, I guess, because
that's true. You're
you're experiencing
actively on the dive.
The limited edition live. You're actually the fan that we bring on the podcast for the live fan experience.
I won the raffle.
You won the raffle.
Yeah.
How does it feel to be here as a big fan?
Oh my God, it's just so great to meet two of my.
It's good to be
my
here,
heroes, honestly.
But the circumstances surrounding, our visit,
yes.
I kind of feel like that, that meme news article.
I'm repping the evil geniuses, though. You can't see because it's black on black.
He's repping the evil geniuses, and I'm man who thought he had lost all hope, loses last little bit of hope he didn't know he had. That's me, actually, while watching EG play against G2.
So I think in general people have had a lot of different feelings about this group stage, but I think that group was especially
Mine was
depressing.
mostly pain.
That group was especially depressing.
I want to stop this right now, though, because I already was coming into this with the perspective after hearing the party after finals. Impact and Inspired were both telling JoJo and Danny. They literally are, it's the party afterwards, so everybody's getting a little extra.
Yeah.
But they're like, all right, you're going to get shit on every day. We're just going to learn. And so I hearing that right after the finals, I was like, my expectations weren't like, oh, yeah, we're just going to come in and top this group.
I love the contrast between like JoJo's winners interview, which is sick, by the way. JoJo, never stop being yourself. That's awesome. Keep talking trash. Even if you
youngest player at MSI, by the way.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. He's like, we're going to shit on EU. And then hearing at the after party, both of his veteran players are like, you are going to die. You are going to be beaten into the ground and remade from nothing.
But that's what I like, because it's the veterans of the team, and the idea for this team and the direction that they want to go for is growth.
Yeah.
And so coming to MSI is a really good growth opportunity. And I just like that they were so clear. And they had no illusions. They're like, we're going to lose probably every single day, a lot.
See, I'm with you on an intellectual level, and every time it starts, I'm like, I'm gonna have low expectations. If we lose, we lose.
Yeah, but in your heart of hearts,
it's just a game, though, right? And then I start watching the game, and I'm like, KJ, what are you doing? We gotta win.
As soon as the game starts, that the EU-NA rivalry takes over, and you're like, no, we gotta win.
Dude, the first pick I don't like, the first ban I'm not happy with. I'm stressing out. I'm messaging Kobe. I'm like, what is this rap? What are we doing, Kobe?
The very first one.
The Nivea? As soon as they locked in Nivea, I'm like, we lost! We lost!
I actually, as soon as it happened, I looked up the date of the release of Nivea, and JoJo, and his birthday, he was 4.5 years old. Because I know people were memeing on it like, oh yeah, he wasn't even born yet. But he was literally only 4.5 years old, and Nivea was 2009. Anyways, yeah, it was funny too, because that also makes you take a step back. A lot of people got caught up in the hype, and I think you should, because that's what living, life is all about, right? Oh yeah, rookies popping up.
We're living dangerously.
Get super hyped up, but even that game, made you take a step back and realize, oh my God, they are so young still. JoJo has so much to learn. One of the biggest things is going to be the depth of your champion pool. Caps has been one of the best in the world for many, many years. And so he's going to have a lot more depth to pull from. And so as much as it is a joke, about the age and release of some of these champions, that's going to be something that a 17-year-old is, going to have as a weakness.
Yeah. And Matt, maybe you can throw the group standings up behind us for those of you who are watching the video for
did we start talking about the EU and A
No,
games?
you're fine. No, because I'm going to continue here.
Early?
But just to say, though, the thing that sucks a lot about this group and being a 3-team group, and of course part of this is because the LCL unable to attend this time around, you can find specific wording on LoL Esports, is that they just literally, they got punched down on, or they were the one punching down.
Yeah.
And so there's just... I don't think that they get a lot from this group. I think if they're in a 4-team group and there's someone that they can beat that's more like, I don't know, even Istanbul Wildcats or Red, I thought showed some good performances. If they can fight a PSG, if they can fight the VCS, even Detonation Focus Me, I think there's some room to like learn greater lessons than, we're going to shit stomp these guys or we're going to get stomped by these guys.
So I don't really agree, to be honest with you. I still think there's a lot you can take away from the G2 games. Like, G2 was clearly the far better team. Caps is styling on them. It's like a Caps highlight reel in the EG games, right? But like 3 out of 4 of those games were winnable games, right? Like, the last game was like a 40-minute game. They had one game where, yes, G2 had to throw at Baron, but then they had 3 and Hibs down. That was one team fight away from winning.
Yeah, that's true.
Their other game was actually pretty close. The only one that was just like, turbo stomp, this is over in 1 minute, was the Anivia game.
Yeah.
The other 3, G2, it felt like they were in control. I didn't necessarily believe that EG was going to win those games because, like, I actually think G2 drafted really well, and especially in Game 4 where it was like that Jinx TK comp against Diana, Yasuo, Nautilus, Senna, Vladimir. I'm just like, Jinx is never going to be able to play the game. There's no way that they're going to win this. But it was still like a 40-minute game that was close. So I still think there is a lot you can take away and learn from. I mostly feel bad for Order because Order got put in a group where, like, EG's a pool 2 team, but they're like, most people would rank them as the best pool 2 team.
Sure.
G2 is one of the best teams in the world, one of the favorites for the tournament. And Order just came here and just got absolutely slapped 8 games in a row. Like, they didn't get the competition against teams that are more on their level. So, like, that to me felt really bad. But I still think there's lots to take from this for EG.
Yeah. Just to call back to the specifics of some of those EG and G2 games, I think the ones that were hardest for me to watch were the ones where, coming out of draft, I already had this
we lost.
Bad thing that's in the back of my mind. So no matter what's going on currently in the game, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's like such a good win just in that first phase, for G2. But one of the things I really liked from EG in the very final game that I don't think got enough credit or hype was how they did manipulate the draft to be able to get like the Tryndamere into Sylas counter pick. Is a really good lane matchup, a really aggressive lane counter pick. Yeah. And JoJo was able to play it well early on, getting tower plates, big CS lead. Some of the specific plays that Caps pulled off are actually down to the millisecond. The first stopwatch play on the bottom side where JoJo all-ins him as Tryndamere just after Sylas had won the play on the bottom side and used his ultimate.
Up during the stasis.
Exactly. Yep. I would have done that too as JoJo. He all-ins him because he's like, this guy just used his ultimate on bottom side. And the only reason his ult comes back up in time is literally the last second of the stopwatch. As it's timing out, the ult comes back up for him. Perfect timing to steal the Tryndamere ultimate. It was just like, dude, can you relax for like 1 second? You are so good.
I would all in him too, but just because I have a lizard brain, not because I would have been tracking the ultimate. Just must fight.
Me Tryndamere, me fight
now.
But that was just
different reasons.
God, Caps's stopwatches and his
the Yasuo escape,
playing around
that bot lane one in the 1-v3 where he stopwatches his dummy comes up and he kills like. He was just dunking on him. Like Caps was just built different. He has been really since the lower bracket run. In the regular season, Caps and G2 were pretty pedestrian. I'm gonna be honest. Like they were not that good.
The discussion was Caps in top 4, not Caps. It was like very obvious. It was like Humanoid Larson top 2. It's like Caps Perks. Are they like 3? Are they like VTO maybe 3rd? So like he was somewhere in top 5, which is weird because Caps is like minimum top 2 for 90% of his career.
And now he's the best performing player at the event.
Yeah, which is, again, as an EU fan, really weird. People will always be like, oh, of course he always had it, blah, blah, blah. But, like, he looked pretty meh in the regular season. The fact that it's just like, oh, there's a crowd, he's insane again. It's like, that is a wild thing to witness.
and a little bit of my, like, glass half full is that, like, hey, Caps was kind of doing this to everyone, right? Like,
Sure.
you know, like I expected, you know, EG to be the underdogs against them. I expected JoJo to be a big underdog against Caps, right? He's the youngest player at the event. You know, he is a cocky rookie. I love his attitude. I love that he's talking some trash and being like, hey, we're going to smack you. It didn't happen, but I think you have to have the confidence for there to even be a chance. But I mean, Caps did this to his own region too, right? Like he did this in the lower bracket run to basically everybody. It felt like to me, like the closest games that G2 even played in that streak were probably like against Vitality, where Vitality had some big leads, you know, early on in their lower bracket run. But like G2 was just smacking everyone, and they have continued that, right? Like they crushed through all the top EU teams in their lower bracket run. They absolutely dominated this group. They have been just so impressive, and I love their flexibility. I love their drafting. They're really creative. They play the map incredibly well. You know, G2 is amazing, and EG lost to a really good team.
Yeah, and I like the Top Father video that they put out.
The Top Father video is good. Too. Shout out to G2 content team.
I like the Fortnite dance.
It made me miss Broken Blade so much.
Was good.
The Fortnite dancing.
That was good trash talk. That's the kind of trash talk that I'm like, I hate you, but I can respect it. You know,
like I'm crying.
I feel bad,
but I'm laughing, but I'm crying.
I will retweet this while I'm crying.
Yeah, like it's okay. You take that dub. You earned that one fair and square. Yeah, I think that like talking about G2, I think the thing that really excites me is that we saw a lot of the smart drafting domestically in EU, and I think you first started seeing it in their Fnatic series where they had were trying every answer to LeBlanc, and it was Karma, it was Lissandra, it was a lot of different things, and ultimately only the Karma really worked with a Hecarim jungle. But that was the kind of moment where I started to look more at G2's drafting and how smart that they would be, and I think the back half of their playoffs run is a lot about them being a step ahead of everybody in terms of meta, and that ultimately does give them a huge drafting edge, just getting Ahri Jarvan 90% of their games, Broken Blade being, I think, the first EU player to really appreciate how strong Ornn was on the patch, and leveraging that. But now as we've gone to this tournament, and maybe the changes in stage 2, I've seen that like go even further, where you've got really niche picks like the Anivia, and it's not just
Vladimir top.
Yeah, Vladimir top, and it's not just Caps getting let's say like Ahri when Ahri is strong and people not respecting that enough, or other EU mids feeling like they had the answer, that it wouldn't be a problem for them, but actually like having a champion pool showing us more than just like
so insta into TF.
And again, how does this work against RNG and T1? I'm not entirely sure. I trust that they will have similar drafts, similarly intelligent drafts. It's just, are they going to work as well as they did? Is he going to have those moments in mid lane on Yasuo? Maybe not as frequently, I think would be my expectation, but if they can do that, that's when I'm suddenly like, The two-time? You are like, ooh.
I feel like when Caps is in the zone, like it almost doesn't seem like it matters that much who he's playing against, right? Like he just kind of plays his game, and that's kind of what you have to love about the guy is that he plays with so much confidence. He goes for these crazy like borderline inting plays, and he makes them work because he just has so much experience and so much confidence in his own abilities that he knows like how to play that Razor's Edge.
Also, it's the type of play that I love watching the most. Is like, it reminds me of when the Shy was at his height, is you would watch some plays and he would just try so hard in some situations where most people would be like, you got me, I'm dead here, right? And he's just fighting with every mouse click for every like 50 HP or something, and you're like, why is this guy still trying? And then miraculously works his way out of some situation. That's where you get plays like those Silas stopwatch plays and stuff like that, where it's just like people leave him like, oh yeah, you got him, clean up that kill. There's 20 HP on him as soon as he comes out of the stopwatch, but then all of a sudden, boom, boom, boom. Or, it was just like those sorts of situations where you feel like he's so good and he's always on that it's like hard to contain.
Yeah, Caps is a really interesting player because he's obviously very smart. He's very good at the game, but he tracks everything. And I think it's probably similar to the way that the Shy and a lot of these great players play. It's like a lot of us, when you play League, you're like, when you first start, you just mash your hand on the keyboard. And then you're like, oh, his hook is down, I can trade. And then it's like, oh, his flash is down, I can all in him. But he's like, nah, bone plating's down, I've got Triumph. Like, he is like every single minuscule cooldown that you forget about. Nullifying Orb, he tracks everything. And like, he's a guy who remembers everything and I think leverages those things at the moment. And
Nullifying Orb.
Yeah,
damn. I saw you take Nullifying Orb.
Don't think I'm not ready for that. Like, Tyler 1 didn't see it in that stupid Katarina 1v1 that happened forever ago. Like, it matters. And not that he's ever taken Nullifying Orb, but those are the little cooldowns that come into play. And like, those are the things that I'm always really, really blown away by. And those are the things that I think really matter in those small moments. Because for most of us, it's like, if it's a bad trade, it's a really bad trade. It's like the bone plating doesn't matter because we got hit by Halo Blade's pike 4 times in a row, you know?
The haters are looking at that player and they're like, oh my God, he's so lucky. His ult just came back up in time. No, idiot. He had planned around that.
And that's the thing is like, I'm not going to lie to you. Sometimes he's just like, I'm just going to try it and he goes. Like, I think this is probably true of the Shy and most players like that. And sometimes it's like this flawless math calculation. And the great thing is like, you're never 100% sure what it is unless you hear the comms or you talk to him about it. But either way, it's dope.
And a lot of the times, like, I think people, like the truly great players, just have a good sense for these things, right? They just have like a good kind of internal timing or whatever. You know, it's not always like cerebral. Well, I actually like time stamped, you know, the bone plating 45 seconds ago, or I know exactly that this is 17-second cooldown with that much CDR in this thing. They're kind of just like, nah, he probably doesn't have it up yet, right? Like, you know, they just have that really good feeling because you have to be able to play those small lines to play around missing cooldowns, not just of ultimates or summoners, but of individual abilities of like a counter-strike or a self-heal or a spin or whatever.
And that bottom Silas play is a demonstration of how meaningful it is to calibrate those because JoJo's read, which is the exact same set of skills that you're using, you know, it's that feel. And he's like, wow, he just used his ultimate. I'm all inning. And Cass is like, I just used my ultimate. He's gonna all in. I'm gonna bait him in with the extra time of the stopwatch. And it's just well, and I mean, it's small margins.
And that's the one big way that veterancy pays off, and even in those micro situations, obviously. But I think just general question is Caps the best performing player in stage 1?
Yes. For sure. I think it's like, it's hard to even debate. I mean, you know, you can say, oh, like he had easier competition or maybe than some of the other teams. And we're going to see like who's the best player in the second stage when all these guys play against each other. But if you're just talking about who had the best individual performance, I think it's like almost not even debatable. He had so many highlight plays. He was the difference maker, I think, in a lot of those games that were really close. You know, that G2 maybe like, you know, they have a throw or whatever at the Baron and then, you know, EG should maybe win. Like a lot of times it was Caps making the difference. I think some of the other players, you know, obviously all of G2 played well, but EG at times it felt like got the best of some of the other guys. It never really felt like they were able to get the best of Caps in almost any situation.
Yeah, and I don't feel like, you know, guys like Carrier or, you know, Xiao who have had to play as well as Caps has had to play this early in the tournament already. Because their, you know, the games haven't been.
And don't get me wrong, like Carrier's had fantastic plays and Xiao's been everywhere, but it's never been like, oh, Caps made a lot of what felt like impossible plays possible and built advantages out of what felt like nothing. Where it's like Xiao, who's very smart. He moves around the map super well. Carrier is very good. But then they would build leads and they would just obliterate people. And I feel like I'm starting to wonder if I have to check myself here because part of the reason that Caps got to be flashy is because G2 weren't as clean as T1 and RNG. Like they got
tougher
sloppy
competition, right? Like I do think it's fair to say that it's like, you know, EG is the best pool 2 team. At least that's the expectation. You know, hey, maybe they're gonna get smacked in the next round by, you know, PCS or VCS, whatever. We'll see. But I think almost everyone would have had them power ranked, you know, in top 4, right? So it is the toughest competition for them, and as a result, I think, you know, they're going to be pushed a little bit harder. I think, you know, especially Inspired and Impact, I thought were really good in a lot of those games. You know, there's the Vladimir game, Impact kind of got clapped top lane, but Impact was giving about as good as he got, and I thought Inspired was playing really, really well in a lot of the games. So I do think it was tougher competition that forces you to have, you know, these closer games where you have to make out plays, and Caps was like always there to do it.
I think Inspired is the best performing EG player for me for sure. Like he has been outstanding.
Yeah, the Karthus game was obviously relatively quiet, but then once he was back on the Jarvan, he had the Jarvan game where he was just
for the Karthus game being quiet, I think that speaks volumes. They were losing on multiple lanes, and he's Karthus, you know, getting so much done. The Lilia game, his Lilia, he almost had 100 CS lead. He like almost jungle flame horizon with his Lilia game.
Optimism? How are you guys feeling? Do you feel optimistic heading into the stage? Because I think the big thing
for EG
top 4. Like top 4 is the first goal, and then we get to bracket stage. You guys feel good about top 4? Because I think the only team that I'm not even that worried about PCS at this point. I would just think that the VCS is the only team I think that might.
They look tough, right?
Yeah, I think they're better than PSG.
I think Saigon Buffalo do look tough. I think you know, my expectation is still that EG should get out and get to the bracket stage. My glass half full. I mean, I don't have huge expectations here. You know, I think that EG were big underdogs coming in. I thought EG would get a win at least against G2 in the group stage.
To be fair, as did I.
But you know, it didn't happen. My glass half full is that I do think EG at least like it felt like there was some progression throughout the stage. I thought that like their games were kind of closer. Their early games especially seemed to be getting a little bit better, a little bit cleaner against G2. The last two games, really, like the early game was at least a little bit better. Game 1 was obviously like pretty rough. I think game 1 was like the level 2 first blood, on Danny Ezreal or whatever, the Pike game. They just got super clapped in that game. So I think there's some improvements, and you hope that like, hey, like they're taking something from this, that they're going to improve. They're going to play with a little bit more confidence, because we didn't really get to see that much out of Danny or JoJo.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm feeling like somewhat optimistic about that, but like, do I think they're going to win the event? No, of course not. Do I think they're going to win in the BO5? I think they're huge underdogs probably against anyone, unless they start playing at a much higher level than what they showed in the previous stage.
Yeah, our goal for sure is top 4.
Yeah.
The matchup with Buffalo is super spicy because
they're good.
I am gonna, obviously I'm wearing EG merch. So I'm gonna be, a bit biased as well. I'm gonna favor EG, but
I'm not wearing EG merch, so I'm not biased.
It's the merch. It's the merch.
I would guarantee that Shogun is gonna kill Danny in lane for sure.
Guaranteed.
This was so hyped to me. Their first game versus SKT, he insta locks Tristana Nautilus, and boom, they're in. They kill the best bottom lane in the world, 2v2. And I'm like, holy shit, I love this guy already. Yeah. I'm such a big Shogun fan. I feel like their bottom lane is insane. If they, insta lock Tristana versus us, I'm like, Danny, go hide somewhere. Like, we're gonna die in lane.
Danny has experience on the Tristana.
Yeah, he has experience dying in lane as well.
Yeah, he does. I mean, SGB looked really good. It's also going to be an interesting test because, we were talking about, there's obviously a lot of discussion on format and like, what should have been really going on. I was looking into some of the stats and had, some stats pulled on that because it obviously it felt really one-sided, major region versus minor. And even if you're discounting the 3 replayed games, I believe the record overall was 20-0 for major versus minor. The average game time about 25 minutes, and the average gold lead at 15. And I'll probably tweet out the exact numbers after, but it was about 4,500 was the average gold lead at 15. So like these were absolute turbo stomps. Now, we do have the best of those teams left, right? With the PCS team as well as the VCS team. We have PSG and we have SGB. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see like if they are going to be more competitive, and especially if they're going to be more competitive with EG, because EG obviously turbo stomped Order, but was Order one of those weaker teams? That's kind of the expectation, I
would say, yeah. I mean, like you look at OS as a whole, and they've lost a lot of the talent to NA, and a lot of that talent is doing very well in NA. And I think it's just if they're going to build talent back up, it's going to take time, of course, pending which players decide to stay and leave. And again, based on Order's story, Order weren't even the favorite to make it out of their league. People expected them 4th, 5th. They did have an incredible run, not to take anything away from them, but they did not have any of really outside of BioPanther historic international players come onto the stage.
Yeah, and I mean it's interesting because there are a lot of these teams I think have parallels, right? Like EG was not. I didn't have EG going anywhere in playoffs. EG won 0 games against the top 3 teams in the LCS in the regular season. 0 games, right? Like this was not our dominant team. G2 was the same, right? Both these teams had lower bracket runs. EG went 11 or 12-1 rather, whatever. G2 did 12-0, obviously. Both those teams were pedestrian in the regular season. EG was 9-9. So I think a lot of these teams have that kind of similar story. But I'm just really interested to see how competitive it is going to be, because I feel like Saigon Buffalo as well was really undersold to me. Reading online and talking to some people, everyone's like, yeah, it's all about GAM. GAM just absolutely turbo stomped the league. Wasn't even close. And when I went back and watched some of those games, even just watching in the finals and some of the regular season games, this was very competitive. It was a 3-1 for GAM, but every one of those games, Buffalo could have actually won, right? And they were even pulling back from massive deficits in some of those games. I think we saw some of their weaknesses exposed by GAM, but they're a good team.
And I think this is really, really exciting for the VCS especially because, one, again, reminder if you've been under a rock for whatever reason, this is the first time, again, the VCS is coming back to competition. The fact that they couldn't send their first seed, I think, probably was,
a bummer.
A total bummer for them. And while I totally respect that you want to play in the Southeast Asian games, and I understand that that's going to be the first priority there for VCS fans who maybe wanted to see those players at MSI, the fact that Saigon Buffalo have shown up, and the fact that historically LMS, PCS, VCS, super duper top heavy. Yeah. And when they can get 2 or 3 teams that are playing on a high level, that are playing as well as Saigon Buffalo have or as we expect GAM would have, that's just fantastic for that region. And gives me a lot of excitement when we look ahead towards things like Worlds and other events where I'm not sure how many seats they have now with them coming back. Because there was a point where they had 2. I'm not sure if they're back to 1. I don't know enough about that format decision. But that would be cool because I think this is clearly an international caliber team, at least in terms of at least they were in stage 1, and we'll see how they do in stage 2.
Absolutely. I mean, their bot lane is super legit. I think, if there's weaknesses, it's probably Froggy and Binche. I think that, even if you're looking back towards, their regional play, we saw Levi taking advantage, I think, of Binche in a lot of those games. And, they were able to like punish Saigon Buffalo's bot lane, by having a lot of jungle attention down there, by going really aggressive on them, because it does feel like Shogun and Taki want to play aggressive, right?
Oh yeah,
and that can leave you open to getting ganked.
Yeah.
So we'll see how much these teams have kind of done their prep against them. Hosmed, I think, is also a guy who has been getting less talk. Obviously, I think a lot of it just started because right out the gates, the double kill on Carry and Gumayushi, everyone's like, who are these guys, right? And then they played really well and they deserve their hype. But Hosmed was such a key member for them in regional play in the VCS. So much about getting him counterpick. They had like really creative drafts. There was even one draft, I heard about through Kelsey Moser, which was really interesting, where it was like they blind picked a Camille and then to get him counterpick, roll swapped the Camille to support so he could still have counterpick. Like they are all about getting Hosmed the matchups he wants so that he can stomp lane, because they believe like that's how they're going to win. And so he's a really exciting player as well. As far as like the EG Saigon Buffalo matchup, Impact is such a veteran, and I do think he almost always delivers at a high level on the international stage. So like I'm not super worried there. But they're a strong team, and if JoJo and Inspired aren't able to take advantage of mid jungle, because I think that's probably like one of the edges for EG, then I do think you have to be worried about losing to them.
And to be completely honest with you, I think that I expect fully for this team to take at least one game off top 3, just because of the way that they play it. And that I think aggressive teams are always going to do well in best of 1s, or at least better than you would expect them to do in a best. I think best of 5s are always hard for teams that are super aggressive like this. I think people figure out and they deal with it. But I think at best of 1, you're always going to have that, and especially if you are maybe not as prepped as you should be. But given how many times G2 has dropped random games to the VCS over the years, I feel like that trauma lives on in Caps and Yankos, and they're probably going to be super prepped, and Dylan definitely doesn't feel like a guy to shortchange it. So we'll see. But that's the matchup I'm honestly most excited for, short of EG kind of rising up, showing us that development and being able to take some games off G2. I think that would be super hype if they get a 1-1.
You're more excited for that than like T1 RNG?
See, the thing for me about T1 RNG is I know I'm getting that best of 5, or I assume I'm getting that best of 5 somewhere. And that's what I want to see, is that best of 5. I don't care about a best of 1 between those two teams. I think it's going to slap.
This is crazy to me.
I think it's going to slap, but don't get me wrong. But I'm just like, I want the best of 5 there. Because like the best of 1s, like we're going to say goodbye to 2 of these teams when we move to best of 5. And that best of 5, I'm going to feel alive.
You want all of your dishes to be different. See, I'm okay with having my appetizer be the exact same as my main course, be the exact same as my dessert.
If it's as delicious as Carry on Gumayushi.
I'm just going to eat it up, baby. Yum, 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 yum.
That was
the yum 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 was what you broke me. You broke me. No, I mean like look,
2 a.m.
That's a good, but like
the top 3 is really hype. I'm really excited for that.
I think,
but this is also an interesting story. Like I agree.
Yeah. I think for me that's the story that's the most interesting, and I think that RNG T1 I expect them to be top 2 at this point. And so to me it's like if one finishes 1, the other finishes 2. It's like we'll get that answer who the best is in a best of 5. G2 versus both of those teams is super interesting to me, because that will define tournament expectations for EU fans. And I think they play both of these teams on day 1. Match 1 being T1, I think match 4 is RNG, which is a tough way to start round 2. But if they win games, if they get games, and we'll have to see if they can keep that up for the 5 days of group stage, that's like, I'm starting to feel good.
I mean,
starting to feel confident.
Well, yeah. So part of the reason why I'm so hyped for all of these games between the top 3 is because it's so crazy how essential each mid laner is, not just to their teams, but to their whole regions. A lot of people think of Uzi still as like RNG. It's Uzi's team, but that is so far in the past. Xiaohu has played for this team for longer. Xiaohu has played for this team for over 5 years. Faker obviously needs no explanation.
Titles in 2 roles.
This is
and Caps is the greatest EU player of all time, leading G2. It's just like the triumvirate of these 3 mid laners of these 3 teams all clashing at MSI is such a crazy hype story for me.
I also think even just like storyline wise, it's really cool because I believe RNG and T1 are the only two teams that have 2 MSI titles, right? So they could be battling for third. If G2 has a really good series...
It's the extended MSI best of 5.
Yeah. I mean, if G2 wins, they could tie for having 2 MSI titles. Like the big 3, I think is incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think no one's expecting a world in which any of those 3 don't make it to the best of 5 stage. That's why I think, like Drakos is saying, hey, like it's interesting to see, who does.
Like, don't get me wrong, the stories are good,
teams.
but I want those stories resolved in a best of 5 to me. And that's the thing, the best of 1.
Because they will be,
yeah,
right?
Because they will be.
If you go like 1-1 or 2-0 even or whatever, but then you play the best of 5, like no one's really going to be caring too much unless it was super, super one-sided.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just think those 3 teams are so interesting because I think they all play the games in different ways and they all have kind of different strengths and different approaches to the games, and it's not even really like the traditional ways that you would think about the regions, right? Everyone thinks about LCK, all right, you're like super slow, you're methodical, you're playing for late, you're waiting for your opponents to make mistakes, and then you're crushing them with really good macro. LPL, you're the madmen, you're just going all in early and you're fight, right? Like these teams are kind of bucking the trend of what their region does. T1 really is the like out hands you team, I think.
Yeah.
They are so much about early game focus, about actually prepping their waves perfectly.
That's why they added all the zoomers.
Yep. Moving around the map and actually punishing on these perfectly stacked waves. They trim it, they time the waves, they time these rotations so well, having Faker move around, so much of an emphasis on farming plates for Gumayushi, putting resources into getting him and Keria ahead. Keria is not this like madman roaming around the map as much. He mostly doesn't even really go to top lane very often. It's been more this focus, especially in the regular season and playoffs, about just like getting Gumayushi to the stage. And they're so good individually that they kind of just like run over teams in the early game just through laning prowess, right? Yeah. And then you look at RNG, this is a team that was like so much about objective control. They won many of their games. You look at the 2 series against top, so much of it is coming down to...
They lost like every early game against top.
Exactly, but it's just Gala, his team fighting, the way that they set up around objectives, the way that they actually execute on these team fights is incredible. And then I look at G2 and I think G2 is maybe more in line with what people expect from a region, because I do think Europe's success has been through creativity and aggression. Yeah. And I think G2 kind of embodies that. G2 to me is an incredibly creative and intelligent drafting team. And I think they're the best team at actually moving around the map and actually creating action through their movement, right? And they're also a team that I think isn't going to have like the perfect setup in a way that T1 will in the early game. They're more willing to take shortcuts to test you on timers that you're not used to, which I think is really interesting, right? Like Jankos won't always, do a traditional path. Like he'll skip camps. He'll do an inefficient path to gank you at a time that you're not expecting. They won't always stack and try to like, dive on the cannon wave, right? Which is like very traditional in top lane. Sometimes they'll try to preempt it and they'll fast push and capsule move top and drop a wave and they'll dive you anyway. And like they just kind of do this different off-tempo style that I think is really fun to watch. So it's like all 3 of these teams are very unique and incredible at the styles that they play, which is like, how much more can you ask for?
Yeah, and I think real quick, I think the thing that excites me the most about Stage 2 is that sadly Stage 1 just felt like a wash, where it's like, we can't use any of these stats. They all stomped. RNG, they weren't the great early game team domestically. Well, they were the great early game team in Stage 1, just like G2, just like T1. So that is the reason that I think these matchups really are going to be exciting for me, even if I know they're going to be resolved in best of 5s, is finding out if those comparisons, if any of our domestic comparison points actually mean anything, because we did not learn anything from Stage 1, sadly.
We can't use these stats things, especially so funny for like RNG and Galax. They had to replay the games, and he's like, "I got the first pentakill," and they're like, "No, you didn't. We got to replay that game."
9-0.
He's like, "I said I got the first pentakill." We're like, okay, you got to do it again. I understand, man. It's so hype, especially like the meetings of those bottom lanes. That's what I want to. I'm gonna jump in way back when you were talking about SKT and their lane prowess. I legit think Owner surpassed Canyon as best jungler in the world. Like he is playing so incredibly well and has been playing so incredibly well for T1 right now. I just feel like, especially, I always try and jump on hyping up at least one of the one jungler per big international tournament that we're going for.
Yep.
And for this one, it's like everyone's going to gravitate towards T1 because they're undefeated and coming out of it. But he's actually playing so incredibly well.
Yeah, I think Owner is a terrifying player to deal with. And I think when you look at the jungle pool too, the way that it's evolved, where there are still the option to play more of these engaged champions. There are still the option probably for the Jarvans, etc. With the Wukong coming in, with more people willing to play Graves. That just makes good junglers.
Told you back on the dive 3 months ago or whatever, when those buffs came out, it's going to spam Wukong.
I said the same thing.
Broken.
I knew it was going to be broken. You're saying you told me. I knew it was going to be broken. Everyone knew it was going to be broken.
I mean, it's the W. It turns out being able to go over a wall makes for way better jungling.
And they buffed his jungle clear at the same time.
Yeah, it's not just the jumping walls, but yeah.
E damage on monsters and Q cooldown. All those things just add up.
It was a huge buff. I mean, he's really strong. It's going to be interesting. I agree. Owner has been incredible. And I also think when you're looking across at some of the other competition, we're looking at RNG. I think a lot of people are going to be super focused on that matchup. Wei to me was much more hit or miss, right? Like he has been very up or down, throughout playoffs and even in the regular season. Like he had some bad games, and a lot of times when you're looking at an RNG game, and if there's someone that's going to be running it, it's probably going to be Wei, right? I think Ming had a couple bad games in playoffs, but Ming was pretty incredible throughout the year for RNG. And Wei is kind of that guy that if he gets put down, he will still kind of continue looking for plays and sometimes can be a bit of a liability. Yeah. And that has been kind of an LPL tradition for a lot of years, where sometimes these guys have good games, sometimes they have really bad games. And I think that has been what has kept some of the top LPL junglers, even ones who have won international titles, away from maybe the discussion of best in the world, is because they haven't been as consistent as some of the Korean junglers. Like when you think of Canyon, you think back to Tien, you think even MLXG further back, and some of these guys where people kind of talk about them as more coin flippy. I mean, RNG definitely has that element. I guess Bin is maybe somewhat in that category too, just because Bin has never seen a fight that he doesn't want. Right? he's gonna go at you no matter what, and he has incredible mechanics, so most of the time it works. Yeah. But when it goes bad, it can go really bad because of that super hyper aggressive playstyle that they sometimes are going for.
Yeah, I think when you look at the top three, I think Owner's just clear number one, because Jankos is a player that is very good, but he's not the greatest hands player in the world. He's not a bad hands player. I think people are probably too harsh on that. But he's smart, clever gank pathing. I think I remember hearing from teams who had played against him in playoffs oh, we should have just banned Jarvan, because he's going to EQ over some wall we didn't think of, and our wards are going to be freaking useless, and it's just going to be annoying. And it's the same shit with Wukong. There's all these champions in, but Owner just feels like the complete package, which I've gotten used to now in the Canyon era. Just being oh yeah, this is a jungler who's just good at everything. Just fine, sure, great, no weaknesses, great. I don't know how we're gonna build this narrative. He's just really good, guys. We're just
yeah. Oh, such
unpunishable jungler. Great, let's talk about that guy.
Superhero. It's the Superman. Of junglers,
Superman is a trash superhero.
Thank you.
He's so trash.
Every time I bring this up and someone just disagrees with me, I'm well, now I respect your opinions less.
He's just kryptonite. Yep. He's just kryptonite.
He's super strong. He can see through walls. He can fly. He's also shoots lasers from. Come on, this is a superhero made by 3-year-olds.
I just like how they've almost forgot about. Oh, he needs a weakness. No, he's got a weakness. What is it? Kryptonite. The special rock. Yeah, where's your weakness?
Did you ever play against Evelyn back in season 1 when she was OP and people were just buy oracles or whatever the hell? Yeah. That's the same shit. It's not fun. Nobody wants to play with Superman. They have to make up stupid villains that only he can fight to justify him as a character.
Especially way back when oracles died with you.
Yes.
If you died.
Yes, I remember. Oh God, being a support. An absolute nightmare of dying with Oracle.
You were a Dota support back in the day, man.
I mean, yeah, you didn't do damage like a Dota support or have CC like a Dota support.
That's when I felt alive, though. I was oh, I got an Oracle's on me. Woo! It's you're playing hardcore in Diablo or something like that. You die, then you're just dead. You lose the game. You can't come back.
Bro, guys, control wards used to be invisible. I'm just saying, for all the Zoomers out there, that shit was just invisible. Invisible vision for invisible people. It was crazy. Oh man, old league. Wonderful, wonderful game that probably doesn't hold up if I were to actually go back in time and play it. But when I look back with nostalgia, love it to death.
I remember playing in beta, and the first time I was playing League, and we're probably getting a little bit off track here, but I remember coming. I'd played a lot of Dota and Han and all these games, and I was oh, jungling. I'll do jungling, right? And I go in and you didn't have all the runes and masteries and stuff, so I just died of the first camp I'm doing. So I could only play Warwick and Nunu because they're the only junglers that didn't need to have any runes or masteries to actually be able to clear. I'm this game sucks.
Jungling is us old junglers. We really, we went through some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're forged in the very hot fires of early League of Legends.
I remember being terrible and playing Rally, Smite, Warwick, or whatever. Rally was a summer spell that gave you an AD buff or an attack speed buff. I don't remember what the hell that it did, but I was like, that's what we needed to get through the jungle. I didn't have flash yet. I wasn't a high enough level.
The jungle used to be a legit like trial. You could not just brain off, look at the lanes and jungle. It didn't used to be somewhere you just got golden experience.
Jungle items.
You had to fight for your life.
Yeah, I remember we got excited when there was a jungle item that was like actually good and useful and you could start with. Ugh. Anyways,
cut all that stuff.
Back to this meta. I think we talked a little bit about the Wukong and the Graves. Bot lane meta has also been super interesting to me because Aphelios and Jinx have basically just disappeared. There's still some Aphelios. Jinx, Danny had one game. I think maybe we've seen one other one. But
that was grasping on to the remnants of the past. They're like, if we pick him Jinx, will he just get another pentakill? Right? Well, is that?
I mean, you could see that it was well practiced, and they did do really well just moving around the map and getting plates, even if ultimately the game was completely unplayable because Diana.
I think that's probably the role that's had the biggest change of champions MSI compared to what teams played their playoffs on.
Yeah.
Because Jinx Aphelios was so dominant and meta shaping, and them falling down has really broken up and had these ripple effects. I think that's probably the biggest.
We got a lot of different champions, which I'm happy for because this whole year has just been like.
But it affects teams. It does affect the certain teams. Like if the team went on a big run and used only singular strategy, and then that changes.
Of course, I mean that's how EG kind of had their big run. Was team fighting with these hyper carries. Having Danny on them in the regular season, they really struggled. For a lot of the year with their drafts, they couldn't find a strategy that really worked for them. Their players were even flaming their own drafts on socials, which is like not something you see because it's kind of a no-no, right? But they were really struggling. I mean, this was a 9-9 team in the regular season, and to Kobe's point, they figured out what worked for them in the meta and really cruise through playoffs with this, and now they kind of have to reevaluate. They came out obviously with the Samira in the first game. That didn't work. There's some of these. Or maybe it wasn't the first game; it was the second game. I can't remember. But like there was the invade where you had to go W at level 1 and so on. And, Inspired referenced that as like, hey, like okay, game 1 we got first blooded on Ezreal. Game 2 we got invaded and he had to start W. So like they were talking about how their bot lane is kind of getting derailed very quickly. Through some intelligent plays and good all-ins that G2 was doing. But they've had to kind of reevaluate, and I'm interested to see like. Given some time now between group stage and Rumble, like are they going to just be like, all right, guys, this new stuff doesn't work for us. We're only going to play Jinx and Aphelios, or are they going to try to actually adapt?
I don't think there's a high chance of that, but
I think it's just so
we have
restricted.
seen that happen at international events before.
I think the draft can be really restricted when you play those champions, and obviously you're more incentivized towards engage jungler, engage top. You want a lot of frontline and just protect that main threat. And I think the thing that we've seen is with those champions fading away, with Gwen obviously getting buffed back into being just I think probably overpowered, to be honest. She just seems universally blind pickable. It just seems like top lane pool has opened up
she's
completely.
The most picked top laner right now.
Yeah, and she seems just like
by a mile, by
universally
15 Gwen games, second most played, 6 GP.
Yeah, it's not even close.
Yeah.
But on the Danny point though, I want to see him on Samira on Tristana.
Yeah.
It's not like this narrative of that got built over the win streak of EG and them having so much success on those carry style, must feed all your money into them so they can carry the team fight later type of AD carry. Those two, I don't think those two fading away should be a death sentence to EG. I think they should be very adaptable.
Yep.
I mean, Danny's. Well, okay, which one's more famous now? His most famous first early pentakill was on the Tristana in the...
and he was known as the Samira one-trick when he was first coming out.
And, and they had literally had a Samira highlight package made of him when he was announced and signed to the team. So that's why I do want to see him on those types of champions.
Well, and it seems to me that just in general, like right now with the amount of, especially the amount of damage coming in from the jungler, you need to play a self-sufficient AD carry. And I think Samira is more along those lines, but like the Ezreals, the Kai'Sa, these champions that don't need a super beefy front line to get space for themselves in team fights. And
I think Ezreal is so good right now.
Yeah.
I think Ezreal should be used even more.
Kai'Sa, Ezreal, it seemed like the two clear top ones right now. I mean, I think Samira situationally can be really good. To me, Samira depends more on your opponent's comp than on your comp almost, because it's like if there's a lot of point and clicks you see, it's so hard to ever get an ultimate off. And if you're never getting an ultimate off, you're just not that useful, right? Like, you need to be able to dive, you need to be able to go aggressive. Everyone is playing, Nautilus, Leona, Alistar, like things like that are going to be able to disrupt you, very, very quickly. If you're trying to dive into the middle of a team that has, Wukong and TF and Ahri, like there's so much CC that I do think it's really difficult for Samira to actually find those pop-up fights. And Samira was 0-4. I mean, not necessarily top teams picking it, but
he's also a really good Senna. And I think Senna plus carry support should be played even more than it is right now. We got a couple little blips, we're like, ooh, carry is going to play, Wukong, and stuff like that. But
the other thing I'm really curious about is the Kalista and how much Kalista shows up. And now, obviously, like the Kalista games we have aren't, I think, the greatest tape. We have a Kalista mid game where she goes lethality, which shout out to ARAM builds finally showed up in a real game. We've obviously got the Kalista bot where
2 bot games.
2 bot games, one where they didn't opt to pair with the Rumble. That was the carry game. That was, again, T1 had already qualified, so hard to take from that. But this is something that was explored a lot back in, I want to say MSI 2019, back when Nico top was really OP. They explored, G2 was looking into like Kalista unpaired using Nico top. I don't know why.
Some spears. I got it. He was playing. He was
Nico
Kalista right there.
Because she can start channeling the ult and then you can throw her in. And there's essentially zero counterplay. And I wonder if with the strength of Wukong, if there are going to be situations where someone picks a weaker laner, something that is less threatening, and you can pick Kalista and not pair it and then pair it on your Wukong jungle or something else. And similarly the Senna pairings, because Wukong seems really broken. So any way you can enable a Wukong in your draft just feels good to me.
I don't see it when top teams are playing top teams, just because I think you're taking away one of the greatest strengths of Kalista, where it's like, if they pick a weak laner, yeah, sure, you could get through the laning phase without binding to your support and then bind to Wukong and maybe have an advantage there. But also, you could just play like Kalista Thresh or Kalista Leona or Kalista Nautilus and just kill them if they're playing a weak laner, right? Like,
sure.
You can play a very lane dominant style, and I do think Kalista has to play the game from ahead to like have an equal contribution to like an Ezreal or whatever, right?
Sure, yeah.
So I'm not expecting it. I do think it can be cool. Like it's a strong strategy, especially with some of these ultimate based champions. Like back in the day in rank 5s, I had a friend who would always play Skarner, not actually Flowers, but another friend who would always play Skarner. And
there's 2 of them?
Yeah, he's the other guy. And so one of my friends would always play Kalista bot and not leash, and then at 6 he would link with the Skarner, and at 6 you'd come down and you'd get a free kill every time. But it's like, well, your lane is a lot weaker, your 2v2 is a lot weaker, so it feels like it's such a big trade-off.
Yeah, I'm wondering. I'm theory crafting in my head. I'm trying to figure out when it's viable, because it seems that specific interaction seems really strong. But you're right that the cost you pay for it is ludicrously high, so you have to jump through some stupid hoops to make it work.
Yeah, you have to think that it's like, I think it's like it's a curveball, and maybe if you think that Wukong can really 1v9 this game, and you like draft 2 pushing lanes on top side, and you get Wukong way ahead, then it's like maybe there's some world in which it makes sense.
I think it's always going to be better in that case if you want to implement this to just have it as a top lane Kalista into a good Kalista matchup on top lane.
I can see that.
Vol, I think the reality is if you're Kalista and you're not pairing, whatever you're doing is going to be volatile. Whether it's going bot lane and not pushing your lead as big as you should by not pairing with your bot lane pairing, or going top lane and having a laner that is as volatile as Kalista top lane. Regardless, Senna Wukong
just get you some peak shot the Shy or like Huni, Kalista top lane play and.
Yeah, no, I'm ready. I'm not opposed to someone picking Kalista top lane. I've seen the feast and famine that is Kalista top lane. Maybe more solo queue experience than pro experience, obviously, seeing these guys, but definitely something I'm concerned about. Generally, though, I think that like top lane meta feels wide open. There's so many things that like this is so good, because playoffs meta felt so boring to me outside of like Ahri coming to the meta and a lot of people figuring out Ornn was OP, which when the great discovery, at least in EU playoffs, was that Ornn was OP, like that's the least exciting thing that could possibly happen. Yes, the tank is back.
Yeah,
great.
We had an interesting relationship with Ornn and NA as well. And then Impact came out as the only one who could conquer both sides.
Yeah, I felt like tanks had actually been OP all year, just no one's playing.
And they've buffed for this MSI patch. They buffed Mordekaiser, which is what Impact smashed the hardest with against an Ornn. So
yeah, did get played once.
It's a decent buff too.
I can't even remember, but someone played it in top lane in MSI. Mord.
MSI also, yeah. I mean,
Impact
played it in.
Regionally as a counter. Yeah, that and the Aatrox kind of came out as the ones in NA that were kind of the answers to.
And Aatrox is
Aatrox is more so.
Is the old.
So
long-standing.
I think looking ahead, we've kind of talked about every team except for PCS. So I think we got to. Is there anything I'm not.
Dude, I just think their Maple replacement sucks.
I mean, they have
their mid lane is soft.
I've heard a lot of different things from them. I've heard like there's some communication issues, but it just feels to me like 3 people trying to hold the ship down, and they're like, if you don't have jungle mid in a tournament full of pretty solid jungle mids, I just feel like it's impossible.
They got really hurt, but like their region has really kind of suffered, I think, from a lot of people leaving. Doggo was playing as a sub for them when they made semifinals for MSI last year, right?
Yeah.
So they lost Doggo, River, and Maple, they're probably their 3 best players at that event, right? And so and it's like it feels very difficult. Like Hanabi has been this really solid guy for them for so many years. Like he's dominated in their regional league for so many years, won a bunch of titles, but like never really as the primary carry. He was always kind of like that stalwart guy in the top lane that's going to hold it down and play a lot of Gnar and tanks and whatever.
I mean, his original career though was Yasuo one trick, and he used when he was a young fella, he used to play a carry.
He brought it out like once ever internationally that I can remember though. Like I'm talking about international play, he was almost always playing like the weak side guy, and they'd play through heavily through mid jungle. I still think Unified and Kaiwing are strong. I still think that like there is possibilities for them to win in team fights if they can get there. But I do think Juhan and Bae are pretty outclassed. By everyone except maybe like SGB, because I think BJ and Froggy are kind of their weaker members. But it does feel like PSG is the big underdogs in this one, because it's harder to see like where they are supposed to get their big edge. They just feel like a team that has lost so much. It lost a lot of their big strength, right? And you think back to traditionally, it was like Flash Wolves days, and even in PSG days and stuff and like it was always the team that came out of LMS and then the PCS was like 300-0 and like had the most ridiculous stats, and like this wasn't even that for them this year, right? Like they were not as dominant even regionally in this year. I just think that their top team has just lost a lot of their best players. It's really hard to kind of have that same level of performance.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation, no doubt, but I mean you see it even obviously. They're not going to have the greatest group stage stats. They're not one of the big favorites to come out on top like RNG or T1 or G2. But just looking at it, it was... Yeah, I wasn't even... To be honest, I wasn't even 100% sure if they were going to make it out. And then obviously they turned things around pretty well. But yeah, it's a difficult... Underdog is the best phrasing. I think you can nail that, Isaac, in terms of trying to be respectful. Because it's a little doom and gloom over here in my corner, at least.
I think they can definitely team fight.
Yeah, they can win games. And they can also still take games off people. So
I think my big thing is just their early game is like
their early game was a struggle,
there's like look at RNG, quote unquote weak early game team or weaker early game team in the context of the LPL, but they're still monstering most teams. Same thing with T1, G2's early game is they're going to be no slouch. EG, especially when we talk about Inspired being the best performing player, are going to come out swinging. Saigon Buffalo. Hyper aggressive early game, like it's just the odds. Even though they do have some strengths to their team, it feels like their weaknesses are the worst weaknesses to have in the context of a lot of the teams around them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's going to be tough, right? And even against like Red, like they obviously lost their first game against Red. I didn't feel like they were super dominant even in their 3 wins, against the Wildcats in the one game that they won against Red. They're gonna have to go up against RNG again, which RNG obviously was blowing everyone out in that group, so that's gonna be tough. But I mean, you can never underestimate them, because this is a region that has done pretty well traditionally at MSI. When you look back to LMS and PCS, I always felt like they're the MSI region, not the Worlds region. They always seem to kind of flame out of groups
because they were always so top heavy. Both of those regions were.
But even their best team never seemed to do like Flash Wolves never seemed to do that well at Worlds, but like would be way more competitive. It felt like at MSI, and maybe that's just kind of like anecdotes that have stuck in my head. But it has always felt to me that they've done better at MSI, have been more competitive, often make it out of groups.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel that. I'd be curious to check the numbers, but I think I instinctually I feel like you're correct as well. But it's one of those things that maybe it's just those were the truly great highlight moments, and maybe who knows what the actual numbers feel like. Looking across, tournament favorite. Is it too soon to call one? When you look at things, I think
I still have T1. My tournament favorite has not changed since entering the tournament.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Like everyone.
So I'm interested though. Did you guys have T1 as a favorite even coming in? Because it sounded kind of hesitant.
No. So for me, I think that the big thing is T1 was the easy choice, and I was trying to wonder. I think as an EU pundit, you always want to like look at G2, but there's like 2 EU pundits. There's like. I think Vetti's what I would call a believer, and I'm what you would call a non-believer, and I'm like constantly like you guys talked about when EG going to draft, I'm like, oh no, what are they doing? Oh no, they threw a bear and they're going to lose the game. I'm like constantly living in fear of being let down. Yeah. So I just think that it's hard to. I think T1 are the easy one. I think T1 is probably the answer because again, I don't think sadly stage 1 taught us nothing. I think about how specifically the top 3 are going to stack up against each other, and stage 2 is going to show us a lot. So I think T1 are still the easy bet. I'm hoping that G2 shows a good performance because I believe in G2 and best of fives. I think that draft thing that you talked about is huge, and I believe in their ability to prep to best of fives, and it is a shorter turnaround time to those best of fives, but assuming that they finish expecting 3rd, maybe 2nd, I can't imagine that if we assume T1's going to finish 1st, that they're going to pick them. They'll probably pick whoever 4th. So I would guess RNG G2 first best of 5, and I think that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I just think T1 has to be your default favorite. Like, they look like the team with the least obvious weaknesses. They've been incredibly solid, right? Like there's more things where I think you can like poke holes in G2 and RNG and like point to some things that like, oh, hey, like maybe they struggled with this in the regular season, or oh, hey, maybe they struggled with this, in some individual games. Like Broken Blade got solo killed against Order, when he had the counter pick in the Fiora Aatrox matchup. He got solo killed by Impact in the GP NAR matchup. Maybe another game too. I think he also got solo killed by Impact's Gwen, I want to say. I'm not 100% sure on that, so you can, I can't remember. But anyway, like there's some things that you can like point to, or you can point to some of the struggles they had.
Baron. They
were incredibly close against against EG. They had some struggles in the regular season with RNG. You can look at the bad way games. You can look at like them losing to top and how that happened, and like some of the ways that they had been exploited. In the series that they literally lost, and they had a very competitive finals as well, where Wei had some bad games. Bin has been punished at times for going over aggressive in lanes and getting preyed on. Like there's just not a lot of footage of T1 doing poorly, right? Like there are some small things. I think sometimes on their dives and stuff, they're not the cleanest. I think that like sometimes like their young players, like some of the inexperience shows a little bit, maybe, right? Like you can say, oh, hey, like Owner and Zeus aren't always perfect in how they set up their dives, but it's just there's not a lot to point to. So until like we get to see some actual footage of them struggling.
I feel like this is a Pokemon Snap challenge. Get a picture of T1 playing poorly, Azael. Oh, better be really quick about it. It's
challenge
rare.
Impossible. Yeah, watch T1 throw. Challenge impossible.
It's actually so funny.
They did lose games though. To be fair, people always say undefeated. Yes, they were undefeated in series. They lost 7 or 8 games, I think, this year. So they did lose games.
Yeah. And there were COVID sub situations. So some of the games, blah, blah, blah. But really what I care about is, can I say Zeus instead?
I want to say Zeus. But
I do not want to say Zeus at all.
I'm glad I'm not the only one. I was actually going to ask you guys.
I'm going to try and bring this up in the story meeting today.
The lightning bolt. It's just like...
No, yeah. Like, he wants to be called Zeus.
He came down to the earth. He's here f***ing people up. It's perfect Zeus. It's canonical Zeus. He's bam. He's f***ing people up.
Zeus would pick up League of Legends so quickly.
I've always been of the opinion that if you name yourself after something that is already established,
you have to take the pronunciation.
Exactly. You can't just name yourself Apple then say it's like
it's not him.
Apla. No, it's Apple it's Zeus.
He doesn't want it to be Zeus though.
Well, if he doesn't want it to be Zeus, then it's Zeus.
Fault. No, because there's another player that's named Zeus. There are 2 Mickeys. All I want to say, one of those Mickeys has disappeared from Pro Play. Now Mickey X is Mickey.
So what you're saying is we just need to make the other
Zeus isn't
disappear.
Here.
The other. Well, no, I think Zeus personally.
But I'm gonna lobby for it pretty hard today. We'll see.
We also have JoJo and JoJo PN, but people are still gonna call JoJo PN JoJo, right? I don't think it matters personally. Zeus just makes way more sense. Every time I hear Zeus when I would watch LCK, I'm like,
so you're saying.
I get it.
Vote.
I get why they're being respectful.
You have my vote.
You have your vote. We get a petition.
We're getting
Zeus 2022.
Strong movement here.
There it is.
Through. You mean
every
Zeus?
vote counts.
Don't you dare say that in my presence.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Whoever finishes higher in the LCK or in any competitive Korean esport gets to pick.
If they're both
pronunciation.
If they're both in the same event, we can call them different things. The other one isn't here.
Yeah, but you can't be Zeus and then give me a lightning bolt icon. Like this.
Again, it's not his fault.
I know it's not his fault. I'm annoyed at the situation. I'm not. This is not nothing against Zeus, formerly Zeus. Currently
also,
Zeus.
So if you remember back to the beginning of League of Legends, before you got to select your role, it was understood the first person who has the highest MMR, because that's how it sorted it,
gets
to choose their role. So Zeus is the highest MMR pro Zeus player, so he gets to be Zeus. Okay,
there it is.
He's first in lobby. Boom.
Bam. That feels much more
Solved.
democracy based. Yeah.
Doesn't matter if the other one was here first. I don't care. This one's better.
Should have been better. Yeah, exactly.
Should have been better.
It's like Highlander. There can only be one. Right?
I agree. I like the Highlander theory for names.
If someone comes in and names himself Caps, and actually becomes better than Caps. Sorry, Caps, you're not Caps anymore.
Yeah, but
That's
nobody's
rough.
gonna come. Nobody's that dumb to come in and be like, "All right, I'm called Caps," and everyone's like,
It also would be
"Excuse me, you just lost your first game. Get the hell out of here. You're fired.
It would be a
your
different
career is over."
Yeah.
And maybe this is
Be a bold move.
I don't remember other Zeus.
Does this still apply? What if someone retroactively changes their name? You know,
Yeah, I don't know.
if like Caps
'Cause, like,
decides
okay, here's the thing.
he's now named like Jizuke. Jizuke just loses his
Yeah, that's
name.
the thing. I think it's fine in this instance because none of us, and I think most of our audience, have any attachment to other Zeus.
Yeah.
It's not like, but if someone comes in, makes their name Faker, right? And we have to call it whatever else for 5 years, but then he like wins 4 back-to-back titles. We can't just erase the history of Faker or have to explain every time like, no, that's Faker 2. This was Faker 1. You have to remember this.
But can Faker erase everyone else's history? Can he just take names? He just annexes
that's
your
the other
name.
thing. It's like he can't just become Caps and then beat Caps
they've
and then
got
beat
he just
Caps.
renames Drakos, and now you got to change your whole thing.
I would take that honestly.
They have
probably a
rules.
positive
They
for
have
me.
rules against it. They literally have rules against naming yourself after
I think
someone who
Faker
already
can kind of
has
do what he wants.
that
Yeah.
name.
I don't think it applies
Probably.
to him.
You think a new person can name themselves Faker?
No.
No, but Faker can name himself after someone who exists.
Faker can change his name
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
Kobe.
You can
And
just
then they
go
have to-
around headshotting people,
Yeah.
making them
Yeah.
lose their names.
and they have to find a new name, but they can't be Faker. He can just take your name.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
He's like, it's not the barcode killer anymore. It's just the
No.
clout name killer. Like
Yeah.
if I don't care. Oh, you're the Shy?
Oh,
now I'm the
you,
Shy.
You won worlds? Well, I've done that a couple times.
All right. Let us know whose names you'd like to hear Faker steal.
Also, sign our petition.
Sign our petition. Zeus for T1 top lane instead of Zeus. Let's talk about schedule. T1 G2. G2 RNG, that's what I'm looking at. You guys got EG RNG, EG Saigon Buffalo. I think those are the big bangers of the day. PSG Saigon Buffalo, PSG T1, How you guys feeling? Is it 2-0 day? 1-1 day for EG?
EG?
Yeah.
I'm hoping it's a 2-0 day. I'm definitely...
If it's 1-1,
I'm not
okay.
expecting it.
If it's 0-2, I'm depressed. And if it's 2-0, we're
popping off.
off. We're popping bottles.
yeah.
We're hitting up the club after the day.
I always want undefeated. I'm not expecting it.
Yeah, I'm a doom and gloom kind of guy. If we get 2-0, we're winning MSI. If we're 1-1, we're getting to finals. And if we're 0-2, we're
if
we're
we
out in
come out, if,
semis.
Why even try?
if
Yeah, why
EG
even try?
comes out,
Let Faker take your name already.
Yeah, just
if either of our
to.
teams,
He can do it better.
God damn it! If either of our teams come out and win one of the first 2 games, we're gonna be popping off hard.
Yeah.
Like if G2
Honestly, it doesn't
beats
take
T1,
me a lot to get excited. It's really sad actually. They don't even need to win against RNG. If they get first blood, I'm probably gonna be popping off.
But then you're gonna get sad by the time.
You're sad by the time they end, but
Yeah.
you're gonna live in that first
I know,
blood
but
moment.
it's
not
we
gonna
just-
last
we're-
long, Azael.
We have like Stockholm syndrome, right? We're just attached to NA so much.
Yeah.
We just can't help it.
You're just like an addict. You
am.
take those quick hits. Oh yeah, give me first blood. Yes. You peak too high, so you gotta.
But I have a low tolerance. That's the benefit. That's the benefit
That's
of
true.
me. You don't have to give me a lot. I'll take almost anything, and I'll get excited.
Yeah, but then the crashes are
The
really
crashes
hard.
are
Problem
hard.
is any. I was listening to some. I was listening to a podcast about this and about stimulation, specifically like stimulation addiction. It was basically just like any stimulation that you get positive is
Yeah.
always paid back negative elsewhere.
You know, it's a really good podcast to listen to if you actually wanted to learn about neuroscience. Is
The Dive.
Andrew, yeah, actually the Dive, because I talk about Andrew Huberman a
He's
lot.
actually, this is the big thing about Kobe is
Yeah.
he's actually a psych study. They use him in schools. That's what. So if you really want to learn,
The dive is really quite varied. There's neuroscience. There's Halawi. There's at least like 6 to 8 cups at any given time.
Yeah, well, we've really got it
really,
all.
I'm just curious. What takes more? What do you think is a more niche thing? Is it like neuroscience or is it like playing Alawi?
It's
Like,
Halawi.
It's Alawi.
Yeah, it's Halawi.
I had to delve deep for that one.
Yeah.
there's a lot of neuroscientists, qualified neuroscientists in the world. There's like 4 people who play Alawi.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it's a difference.
It's really not that impressive when you think
Especially
you
in
put
neuroscience.
Yeah.
Anyone could do neuroscience.
But manipulating tentacles, that's impressive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, how many rockets have gone into space at this point? You know, like
yeah.
rocket scientists. How many Alawi mains are there? A lot less.
Yeah, space.
Alawi world
Rocket
skin.
science.
More like Mobalytics Alawi guy. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
What else do you do on this
Great
show?
job.
Great. I think we're good. We can like banter for 5 minutes or we can close out. What do you guys feel like? You guys want to talk about something?
I want to try that high five again. I've been feeling bad ever since because they're only
Our
going to see...
first high five was great.
Yeah, they're only going to see the
But
second
what if
one,
we
which
fail
was-
again?
But it doesn't matter because we've already failed.
Okay.
They never saw the good one.
Good.
It's not... that was loud. My God.
One more for the people.
No, it's going to get sad.
The problem is
Okay.
he's going. Give back your hand up.
Well,
Or-
you jumped on
No,
that.
How are we doing this then? What are we doing here?
No, you guys have to
Just go.
You guys,
just gotta go.
it's
It was better, but it wasn't our
guys,
first
it's
one.
this motion. It's the far away two
Let's
together.
try you. Left hand.
Left hand. It's not bad. I think it's this though, because I think when you just go straight, your accuracy is good, but the satisfaction is lower.
The sound is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first one was interesting.
Also,
Yeah.
actually, we're gonna end here for sure because the whatever percentage of our viewer base is just listening to audio is just being literally tortured right now. I'm so sorry, headphones users. It's just, hey, let's describe this thing that they can't see at all as we just make loud noises every 5
every once in a while
seconds.
they hear a clap.
Hey, do you guys like clipping? Gah! Anyway, this has been Divephoria episode 2. Games are coming at you starting on Friday all the way till Tuesday. I believe 5 days of group stage before we kick off the knockouts next Friday.
And then only 2 days in the knockouts.
But we'll be back for an episode between
like
stage
that.
2 and knockouts. Brace yourself, EU and NA fans. Lots gonna happen here in these 5 days.
I'm braced.
I'm braced.
Honestly, I don't think I need to. I'm pretty flexible, you know.
All right, Kobe's flexible.
I can
Azael
roll with
and
the
I are
punches.
braced.
We're braced.
I
All
can
right,
roll
let's
with the
get into it.
punches.
This has been episode 2. We'll see you guys next time for episode 3.
Great job. Wonderful.